What's up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of The Loop with yours truly, DJ CEO. The Loop is a show where we talk to folks within the industry, within the culture. We have real conversations, not just about what you've done and where you've been, but it's about why you do it. And we discuss purpose and we get in depth, we get intellectual about it, we get spiritual about it. It's real talk. I think it's something you're not going to see on most other shows. And today's guest, I know he's with the shits. He's going to come with it. He's a good friend of mine. We've known each other for almost over 30 years, about that time. This has been a long time. Brooklyn native. He is an actor, a thespian, if you will. He's made his way through the ranks. You've seen him on some classic shows as a guest appearance, like The Sopranos and Law and Order. And he's also on some current hit shows like Timeless, Preacher, and Better Off Ted. He's also the host of his own show on YouTube, Going Live with Malcolm. Please welcome to the show my good friend, Malcolm Barrett. Malcolm, what up, man?
Hey! Now, there's two corrections I got to make off rip.
Okay, my bad. Okay.
First of all, Timeless is canceled, but it's okay because it comes back every other year, so I get it. All right, and the YouTube show is Going Live with Malcolm. With Malcolm. Yes, you got to. Okay. You got to remember the extra with Malcolm.
So, in all transparency, right? I know of the show, right? But my fellow executive producer helped me with some of the research. So when I read it, I thought it was a typo.
As well you should. It's a ridiculous title. It's a stupid title.
Oh man.
I love how far you come. I love that you said executive producer. My executive producer is my lady.
Well, my wife is my makeup artist. Look, we keep it in the family. We keep it in the family, bro. We keep it in the family. Baby. That's what we do. How you doing, brother? How's everything been with you, especially during this whole pandemic and quarantine situation?
Oh, things have been pretty smooth and easy, man. Have you been having any troubles? Things are really, really easy.
No, you know what? I'm surprised that I've been trouble free. I've been actually pretty shocked. I've been blessed. I tell people all the time, I've been blessed, man. Like, it could be way worse.
It could, yeah. No, and I'm kidding, man. Like, shit's been up and down, but like, I think everyone's trying to find their footing, figure out where to go from here, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do, man. I'm trying to figure my pivoting and my acting and my writing and my protesting and my, breaking a building down. I'm trying to figure it all out. I think we all are, and we'll see where it goes from here.
What's because I know as an actor it has to be tough. I know, like, even for me being a DJ, like being in a venue is kind of like part of the job. Like being an actor and being on a set and there's like hundreds of people, like that's kind of comes with the job. So I know that put a halt on production for a lot of different things. What have you seen like going to works or as plans as far as for companies to get back into production?
Yeah, so Hollywood, much like America, is staggered right now and really not sure what it should be doing. So there are some projects that are going and some projects that aren't. Pretty much everything stopped when COVID hit and when the lockdown happened, right? Like, because it didn't happen exactly as the lockdown happened, because that's what's been happening here is like we're like kind of stopping and starting. And so, shit is bad when it's just like you pretty much get a letter where it's just like, don't worry, we're doing everything, everyone's gonna be okay. And then the next letter is just like, hey man, it's just fucked up. We gotta stop this shit. We gotta end this shit. This shit ain't working. So I mean, production stopped. I was doing a refill, we stopped. But now there's a couple productions that are starting up, but I don't know any show that's full on completed and stopped and finished the season. Like, I don't really know. There's a couple indie things that are doing whatever they can. And, I filmed probably about 2 months in, or who knows, I filmed a socially distant short series with a buddy of mine, Rachel Myers, something called Hotspot. But in terms of big studio things, it's near impossible to do. So it's happening here and there. But there's no uniform thing of like, this is happening. And for the most part, a lot of shooting has stopped, I'm in something that's doesn't even start until it's supposed to start at the end of the year, but I don't think it's going to start until the beginning of next year, to be honest. Plus, I'm not going nowhere. Like, there's too many people. There's too much stuff. Like any given studio set is just too much stuff. Only person I could do it was Tyler Perry, but that motherfucker owns an old military base, and he keeps everybody hostage for about a week while they shoot 8.
Right.
Like also like no one has those facilities. You know what I mean? So it's just like we it's impossible to do it. You know what I mean? He's got houses that are actual functional houses that are also being used for sets.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like studios don't have that, and studios are barely remembering to like test everybody every day. So the shit's happening the same way shit's happening in schools, where all of a sudden it'll be like, look, we're all clear, and then it's just like, wait, are we? Like there's like, turns out Sam was fucked up the whole time.
Yeah, it's been a shit show, and it's started from the top, and it's permeated. And not that, excuse me, not that it didn't exist already on a low level. This pandemic has exposed the idiocracy that is America, not just from a government standpoint, but from its citizens as well. I've seen some of the wildest shit ever, yeah. And you're right. Like even me as a DJ, I remember when the country started to shut down, and it didn't all shut down at once. It was kind of like a domino effect. And I remember I still had gigs, and I was kind of like, what are y'all doing? Like, when are you going to shut down? Like, this is like the NBA had shut down already. And I was like, yeah. We're still going? Like when rich white men go, nah, I'm good. We don't need to make no money. This is dangerous. Like you should also be like, let's stop. And they didn't for maybe like 2 more weeks, and then they stopped. Now, did you say, so you're in Aretha?
The Genius TV series, the one with Cynthia Erivo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's 2 Aretha projects currently making waves. My hit show. So there's a TV series and there's a movie, right? So the movie is Jennifer Hudson and Marlon Wayans. Marlon Wayans plays Ted White, her first husband. So the TV version is played by Cynthia Erivo, who's damn near an EGOT winner. She's one Oscar away. And I play Ted White. And it covers decades of her life.
You want to take it from the top?
What kind of music do you really want to make, Miss Franklin?
I want to make hits, Mr. Wexler.
Genius, Aretha, this Memorial Day on National Geographic.
The Genius Aretha series, which previously did Einstein and Picasso with Jeffrey Rush and Antonio Banderas. So this is the first American that they've covered, American character, obviously Cynthia Erivo's British, and first Black person that they've covered. And female and first woman, and obviously Aretha is a genius for a million different ways, not just her singing and her talent and her creating and her composing, but also she herself was a part of the civil rights movement and worked with Martin Luther King Jr. and to rally folks around. So it's very timely considering where we are, but unfortunately civil unrest and the subject matter is always timely in America.
Always. It always bugs me out when the media, when there's some civil uprising, like the media acts like racism is like a new phenomenon. It's like the country's in civil unrest that like we've never seen before. And it's like, what?
Yeah. No, but you know why, man? It's because it's white people writing the articles, right? Like,
of course.
I mean, like, let's like be really honest, call it a spade, so to speak. Where it's just like, there's this thing, this meme, this idea that folks are making fun of, where it's just like Black people are just discovering that racism exists after, George Floyd. And it's just like, if you haven't been listening, like there's nothing that shows how much you haven't been listening for this to seem novel in any way, shape, or form. I was actually very stupefied by this movement and by white people's awakening. I was very happy because, I've attended protests and I've been there, and for the first time, and I've been a part of different protests at different part of my life. But this is the first one where I've seen white people put their bodies in front in any way, shape.
Yeah, yeah. I want to say thank God for COVID for that, because I think if it wasn't for COVID, we wouldn't have seen it. To be like, not even joking, like very seriously.
No, I'm very interested in how COVID has affected the political climate in terms of what people are able to do and what they're not able to do. So I don't truly know. I do think I think people got time. I mean, I tell you this, you know, I haven't been going out, and the few times I've been going out, I go up masked out, I bring hand sanitizer and alcohol, but the few times I've gone out has been for protests, you know, when I first went out. Because it just felt like it was the only thing I could do to do something, you know.
I feel you. I mean, they've had protests out here, but it's too hot in Vegas to be outside. I use my talent, which is my voice, and I have conversations, and I get conversations going and stuff like that. I do my part, but hitting the streets, it's not. That's not. I've done it in the past. You know what I'm saying? Like I've done it in DC, I've done it in New York, but Vegas, you know, it's a little different. You get a different badge if you out here in 110-degree heat protesting. But let's get into. I definitely want to get into because we're gonna get back to, you know, just kind of what's going on in the country and how we do our part. But I want to get into you and even just how you got to where you are. Like you and I, like I said, we grew up in Brooklyn. I think we did kindergarten, elementary school, maybe.
I think all through elementary, right? Up until junior high, because you went to PS11 all through.
Yeah,
right?
And then I went to 113.
Oh, and then we were at 113 together too.
Yeah, so maybe 113 was the end of it. Yeah, you went to Stuyvesant.
Yeah. I think we were in maybe different homerooms or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. So, what was it like for you growing up, and what were the things that were around you, maybe in your household, or maybe in the neighborhood, that drew you to performing arts?
There's a couple things. I've been giving interviews recently, and I feel like one of the mainstays were teachers that I had. I mean, I think I was a writer earlier in my life, like 5-6 years old. I'm writing like stories, you know. I'm sure very much influenced by my mother, who's also a poet, writes poetries, and you know, she's an old Black woman in Brooklyn, so she's writing like every time there's like a fucking funeral and there's like a little, you know, the programs and shit, she's always writing like the little poems.
Okay.
And shit like that,
right.
You know, but she always was super encouraging of me being creative, and I think first or second grade. My teacher would have me write stories, or I would write stories, and then my teacher had me read them to the kindergarten class. So it was that sort of thing. My mom, I'll always remember this. My mom made a resume for me when I was very young. My mom would keep a resume. I think she started when I was like 8 years old.
Wow.
And she would add things, you know what I mean? And so if it was after school things, or if I do like some little journal, like a newspaper or work in whatever, some neighborhood thing, she would add it on there and put it on my resume. So I had a resume by the time I was like 8 years old and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's like, if I gave a speech, cause you know, I was writing, so I'd give a speech for this, I'd meet with the superintendent and maybe give a speech here and do something at church or whatever. So all of that was on my resume. You know? Yeah. So my mom was trying to prepare me for success at a very early age.
Did she ever like explain to you why she was doing it, or she just did it and you remembered it, and then like maybe later on you guys had a conversation about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was one particular conversation. You know what I mean? I don't think it was like, you know, it wasn't like this where like 40 years later, like I've got a career, and she was like, we were like, you know, way to go with that resume thing. You know, I think it was always sort of a thing. Like, I'm sure she said, like, we were just very honest. You know, my mom was a single parent from, I think, the time I was 5 on. So my mom is sort of unorthodox in terms of, she's funny. I get my sense of humor from her. So we're very blunt and very honest with each other. And so, you know, and it was very clear very early on that wasn't what was important. Education was important to my mother. Schooling was important to my mother. And she thought I was smart and considered me very smart. My mom was, you know, active in community boards and the PTAs and in the neighborhoods and soup kitchens and things like that. So I took after all of that.
Well, clearly your mother wasn't lying because you went to Stuyvesant, and anybody from New York City knows, like, to go into Stuyvesant, like that's the creme de la creme. Well, no, wait, Stuyvesant is below Bronx Science.
No, no, no,
No,
no.
it's Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, and then Tech.
Yeah, and I think they would switch off.
They would switch off. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what's big now. I don't know. It's been a while since I was at.
Either way, all those who are from New York City, you know, those are specialized high school. You got to take tests to get in there. I did not get into any of them. So we clearly, at least during that time, we were on two different.
And look, here we are
now. I matured late.
Yeah, it all worked out. It all worked out.
So after Stuyvesant, so were you doing any like because part of also what did you do also, like, you're a poet, you're an MC, you do sketch comedy, so you're a comic, you know, you're a comedic actor, you do stand-up comedy. Was there at any point where you kind of pinpointed or was like, this is exactly what I want to do, or you just wanted to do all of it?
No, I mean, when I was younger, I knew I'd use my voice, and I think as a kid that translated into like, maybe I'll be an umpire. But then, like, as it grew, like, I was always writing poetry, so I knew I'd do something in that world. And then, like, I'm a child of the 80s from Brooklyn, and so, like, I was also freestyling, you know what I mean? I think I had one of my first freestyles in like Mr. Matarese's class or something like that, or and then I was doing the same thing in high school and in the neighborhood, from Bed-Stuy and Fort Greene. So, it always seemed like that was going to be something. And then, high school was math and science. So at the same time, I was going to Science Skills Center. So I thought I was going to be maybe a biologist of some kind or something like that. And then probably junior, senior year, same time, I was always kind of going between art and math and science. And then I think there was a thing where I was the lead in a play and I maybe had to miss a Science Skills Center thing. And it was like, my lives are coming together. How do I resolve this? Why? How? Who am I? But then I think I just started slipping in chemistry by the time your senior year happened. And then also, I just found my way in the art. Like, I wasn't involved in my school, but the way I wound up getting involved was theater. And I was proficient. I was good. People dug me and I enjoyed doing it. And so when college came around, like you said, Stuyvesant was a specialized school. So my entire life was about taking tests to get to the next school. Right. So by the time college happened, I just went to what I had heard of. Like, I'd heard of Penn State and I heard of NYU. NYU offered me more money, and Penn State, I don't know what my major was going to be there, but I was doing acting. And so I went into acting for NYU. And I think I had an agent by the time I was 18.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Cause I was doing plays and somebody was interning for this agent, Penny Ledke, and she needed young Black men who could sing. I fit 2 out of 3 of those descriptions, at the time. And so I went in there, I did a monologue. I did 2 monologues, one from a play, The Disposable, another from a play, West Side Story. And that's how I got my agent. My West Side Story monologue, by the way, was as Lieutenant Schrank, which I don't know if you remember. Officer Krucky has the famous song, but Lieutenant Schrank is the racist cop who hates the Puerto Ricans.
Right.
Which I guess I was a good actor because at some point the acting teacher goes, "What do you think about playing Lieutenant Schrank?" And I was like, the racist cop? All right.
All right, cool.
Yeah, half these Puerto Ricans are Asian anyway. I think we've played with the color barrier. Right. These Jets and these Sharks are both multi-ethnic, so I don't quite get how this works. All right, let's do this.
Right. I remember the first time, because I know we had ran into each other like at a club or like some after work party in New York, but prior to us running into each other, I remember seeing you in a Verizon commercial. I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was a Verizon commercial, and I remember being home like, yo, I know this dude, because by this point we hadn't seen each other in a long time.
Yeah.
So, And I was just like, yo, I know this dude. I was like, yo, isn't that Malcolm? Like, I'm calling people like, yo, isn't that Malcolm in the Horizon Curtain? And they're like, yeah, that's Malcolm. I'm like, oh, I was like, okay, he's, you know, and then I remember seeing you. So this is like this is maybe 2 or 3 years after college, you know, at the longest. And I was like, yo, one of my boys is like, he made it. Like he's a, you know, he's a celebrity. Like he made it. And then like just fast forward to see where you are now with all the shows that you've been on, all the guest appearances that you've made, and then the shows where you had like major roles and like you are a major part of it. The one thing that stood out to me, and I thought it was very interesting, is that you're usually the lone Black character, right? But unlike shows and productions in the past, usually that one Black character is stereotypical in one way or another. Yours aren't. You might be the one Black character, but you're always an intelligent character. You're a smart character. You're a witty character. Is this something that that when it comes to roles that you're going after, as you're doing like intentionally? And if so, what do you feel like the roles that you're playing? How do you feel that the importance of them are in the landscape of representation of us in Hollywood?
You know what's funny? This is probably the second time ever I've been asked if that plan was intentional. And it is. I mean, I always thought it was pretty obvious that it was. Yeah, I mean, well, so one of my earlier jobs was Sopranos, right? And here's the thing, you know, we talked about this when you guested on my show, when you were on Malcolm and Malcolm, which is that like where we were from, being a smart Black kid from the hood wasn't that much of an anomaly. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like that crazy. Like it was crazy because you didn't see it on television.
Right.
And like, yeah, there was drug dealers somewhere, I guess. You know what I mean? I'm fucking 8. I'm not fucking dealing drugs and shit. Like for us, it wasn't necessarily that commercial where we're jumping through the concrete jungle.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like in TV and movies like to make it appear as though it gives this Jesus Neo complex, particularly for Black folks, where it's just like, that's the one Black guy who's good at something, or the one blah, blah, blah. When we came from a community of that, of different people. So for me, it was always an idea of showing the humanity of Black folks. And a lot of actors are able to go in there and just be actors and just be who they are and have fun. A lot of white actors get to just do that. Like they don't have to represent their community. But for me, there was a compulsion to do so in some way, shape, or form. But even in doing something like The Sopranos, where I played a crack dealer, I'm like, that's real for me. Like, that's real people from my neighborhood. And so for me, stereotyping wasn't about not necessarily just the character you played, but about having depth in the character you played, and then playing a real person with real reasons behind what they're doing. And so, you know, when I started, I think my very first role was in a movie was basketball player number 2 in King of the Jungle with John Leguizamo, which I had a very fun time doing. But I remember when I started doing poetry, the first sort of quip I had was, you know, Malcolm became a poet because he was tired of playing basketball player number 2. You know what I mean? And it was just a thing of like, I also think that when I started having meetings with people and auditions, people recognized my intelligence. And I also made a habit of, particularly in comedy, zhuzhing dialogue and ad-libbing where I thought it made sense. And also very early on in my career, I learned the power of no. You don't have to say yes to everything. And also, like, I grew up poor, so like there's not, I did being poor. There's not, you can't make me trade myself for money. Like, it's just not gonna happen. Like I'll just go back to doing that again. Like, but not being, you know, I don't want to give up myself. And so, and you know, there's been times where I've had to make hard decisions about taking that role, and there's been things where I second guessed myself in terms of taking these chances doesn't mean it immediately pays off, and it doesn't mean that you avoid criticism. You know, so it's like, even in Sopranos, like that was a hard one for me to do. Like it was one that I debated for a while, because I was like, I don't know if I want to play crack dealer, you know, on a mostly white show. You know, and at the time, what folks don't always remember is that the Sopranos series was getting flack too from the Italian American community.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Feeling as though, you know, not wanting a representation of mobsters, of Italians as mobsters on television. And so, you know, making these decisions aren't easy in the moment, although in hindsight, they seem like they're a lot clearer.
Right.
And so it's been a very active thing on my part. And it's going to be a thing that you're going to have to be active about, because Hollywood is still behind. As liberal as the sign is on the door of Hollywood, it's not as much so when you get inside the building.
Right.
And so, you know, it took me having to create these things, have a say, you know, in Timeless, you know, which is an amazing show, but they were smart enough to also listen to what I had to say on top of having amazing writing. And it was in the DNA that this character was a genius, was one of the smartest people in the room. But for me, I think I added wit and dialogue and timing, and certain things that weren't always seen. You know, I was very proud. The two biggest things I brought to the pilot of Timeless was when we first get off the bus when we're in the past, right? And what happens in the pilot is that it's a cutaway scene. Like we're walking, and then you cut away to us getting off a bus, and Lucy, the lead character, going, "This is amazing." You know what I mean? And it was a long talk with the writers behind the scenes, at least to it getting to the point of us dealing with it in the way we dealt with it, in terms of going like, hey, so just so you know, this is my character's first time on a bus in, you know, first time facing possibly legalized racism or segregation. I was like, you know, I asked the question, is this bus segregated? And I don't think enough people, or if anyone, had asked that question before that scene happened, because nothing was taking place on that scene. But me as a Black person doing my character and knowing where we were was like, no, like I was like, okay, so where are we, in Philadelphia, New York, or Jersey, wherever, you know, and the rules were different. Like I had to read up, and that's the thing. When you want to have these opinions, you have to read up and be knowledgeable on them, because you're going to run into hurdles or people who aren't sure or resistant,
Right.
You know, what I'm used to. So that's how it wound up getting to a line of me ad-libbing when I got off the bus, of the lead character going, "This is amazing," and then going to me and going like, "Well, the back of the bus was awesome." You know what I mean? And so so when you ask, is this a conscious effort? Yes, it is a very conscious effort to be more than Hollywood would have me be.
I think that you mentioned the point about like having this struggle with the, you know, with the Sopranos role as far as like being the drug dealer. And I think for Black folks in entertainment, Hollywood, music industry, whatever, our battle is always the balance of representation. I think sometimes we get caught up in this argument and to act as if these things don't exist, right? And these things aren't stories that should be told, because they are informative, they can be entertaining, can be cautionary, but they're real stories, like, you know, drug dealers or drug abusers, you know, and the things that go on, not just in the Black community, but every community. But because there's been such an imbalance of our representation, we're always going to be like, no, we don't want to do that. And it's understandable. But I think to your point is that if you're going to do the role, that you do your part to add depth to that character, so that drug dealer just doesn't come across as an animal and he doesn't know any better and he's just born this way and they're all this way. And it's like, no, you know, you add depth and you add personality to this character to understand the reason why this character is making these decisions is because of these circumstances and blah, blah, blah. And that also comes from writers, and you need Black writers in a room, right? Because if I don't know if there were Black writers on the show Timeless, but I'm sure if they're not, the white writers they're not gonna understand the complexity of being Black during a certain time period in certain locations. They would have never thought to ask, well, is this bus segregated? Because all they know is that when it comes to blacks in the 50s and the 60s or whatever, like, yes, there was discrimination, there's racism, and they were being treated badly, but they don't think about the small nuances that we automatically are aware of. Like, if I was here, this would be the case. It wouldn't just be the fact that I'd get hosed down and it'd be dogs sick on me. It's, you know, a situation was like, no, like I'm have to sit in the back. And if the bus gets crowded, I'm gonna have to get up my back seat too if white folks want to sit back there. You know what I'm saying? So it's important that, and I'm glad that you know, in that situation that you use your voice, but also speaks volumes to the fact that you need black writers in the room. Or at the very least, consultants of black culture and experience when you're doing black characters.
Yeah, no, you need writers in the room. I mean, and that was the benefit that Timeless had. It's probably the most multi-ethnic writers room it was the most multi-ethnic writers room I'd ever been a part of. And it only had 2 black people in it. That's more than most of the writers rooms I'd had in it, you know what I mean? Okay. But it also had other people of color, it had gay people. So I think Kripke and Sean Ryan will tell you this, he wants people that aren't him. Do you know what I mean? And I think the majority of Hollywood, it's an old guard, right? It's an old boys club, it's white, and they want writers that look like them, like, period. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's a fact.
That's really what it comes down to. And this is speaking as someone who's been in this industry for 20 some odd years. I've probably done at least 12, 13 pilots, you know, and I'm being shy about it. It's probably closer to 20 or something like that. And that's a majority of every room I go to. Most writers' room are white, male, and like 40 something wearing like New Balances. Like, that's like every show you're watching on television. You know,
I believe it.
People get annoyed at Tyler Perry's work, and I'm not here to critique his work, but I think the thing is like Tyler Perry isn't any different than Adam Sandler. Do you know what I mean? Like Tyler Perry, except he directs more and produces and owns a studio. But like in terms of the level of humor, it's not that fucking crazy and different, right?
Right.
But the fact that there's so much more room, the fact that like Adam Sandler isn't also the biggest white studio owner that exists. You know what I mean?
Right. That's true.
So it changes things for us because we suddenly get hypercritical and feel like all we have are Spike Lee and Tyler Perry. Do you know what I mean? When there's a myriad of experiences that are out there, and I do think that you are seeing a change, and it's good to see. Like, I love seeing Jordan Peele come out there. I'm loving seeing Marshall Todd, who's doing Woke with Lamorne Morris and exploring that. I love seeing Atlanta and Issa Rae, and, you know, talking about telling our own stories. There are so many Black women that are telling their stories that are doing amazingly.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Cole, you have Issa Rae, Regina King is up here, been doing a thing for 20 years. Kerry Washington producing the work that we need to see in Native Son. Like, just bet on Black women. Like, you'll
always.
Do great. Do you know what I mean?
Always. They have been saving the world since day one.
The world. You got Donald Glover, and it is a thing of like telling our stories. It's not about like, it's not simply like, well, we need people with experience who do this and who do that. You know, they try and make it as though, you know, it's an experience thing, which at the end of the day just benefits white folks simply because it's an old white building. You know what I mean? It's an old guard. So a lot of times that becomes the barrier for new voices, but it's weird because like we keep finding new white voices. Do you know what I mean? And putting them prominent. And, you know, a friend of mine, Lynn, said something that was very insightful to me, which is that Hollywood creates white stars. Black people create Black stars. You know what I mean? Like, Hollywood will throw you some new young white actor who you've never seen ever in your life and put them in things 1,000,001 times, whether or not they're successful. Right? Meanwhile, like, all of our actors are like 40 years old because we've been watching them for years.
For years.
And all of a sudden they're a breakthrough star. All of a sudden, you know, Regina King is a breakthrough star. All of a sudden, Gina Prince Bythewood is a breakthrough director. And it's like, these are people who have been here for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And Hollywood is just now embracing them. They've been sustained because Black America has sustained them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like a lot of these other white stars, that's the thing that we don't get with our white counterparts, is that they're sustained through Hollywood, through the studios, pushing people who have a different measure of success than they do for people of color.
Very true.
And so that's what winds up happening.
Very true.
It's up to us to navigate. And, I do see a change. There is a change, but I think regardless of the change that I am seeing, it's up to us to keep it going. There's no right that was won that people just keep. Right? Like they literally fucking tried to take apart the Civil Rights Act and did. Right? So it's just like we keep having to vote over the right to be alive.
Right. What's the name? Chris Rock, I guess it was recent that, I don't know when the interview was, but I know it's gotten a lot of traction as of late. And he said it best when we were talking about the idea of progress, right? Black people haven't progressed. It's that white folks have gotten less crazy. Mm-hmm. It's not that we weren't intelligent. Like, it's not like we got more intelligent, like we got more qualified, and we got more worthy. We've always been these things. It's just been a group of people who have been denying us access to be a part of the conversation, to be a part of the representation. And now over time, some of them have learned the error of their ways. Some of them are playing the political game, and then it's all about optics and whatever the case is, but it ain't got nothing to do with us. It's about them. It ain't got nothing to do with us.
Racism is a failure of white society, not of Black people.
Yeah, we ain't got nothing to do with that.
It's a failure of white supremacy.
Right. Or rather the success of white supremacy. I mean, white supremacy.
Yep. You know what? You're right.
The success of it.
White supremacy is kicking ass, man.
And it has been doing so for centuries.
Virus, it'll thrive. When we're at our worst, it thrives.
It's like roaches. Like they said if like an atomic bomb dropped, like the only thing left would be roaches. I think that's white supremacy.
Yeah, and one white guy blaming it on Black people.
on Obama specifically.
On Obama.
I'm gonna ask you a question, because I know for me as an artist, right, and I'm a very spiritual person, and I understand that as artists and as creatives, our skill sets are what we have is really gifts, and I feel like they're gifts given to us by God. Our ability to do the things that we do at a high level, to make it look easy, even though we do put in the hard work and we practice and to perfect our craft. But there's the reason why I think we're successful is because we have a gift. It's a God-given gift. And it's I firmly believe like it's a sin not to share your gift with the world. So what I do as a DJ is I share my gift with the world. What you do as an actor is you share your gift with the world. And so we all have purposes and responsibilities within our craft. As an actor, not just you specifically, Malcolm Barrett, but just as an actor, as this vessel, what do you feel are some of your responsibilities and some of your purposes as an actor?
I think my purpose as an actor, for me, the purpose that I've found has been about, like I said earlier, I think a part of it has been about sharing the humanity of people, right? I think selfishly, I enjoy playing different characters. And for me, emotionally, I think it allows me to explore things emotionally or psychologically that I don't always get to explore in my real life. Probably psychologically, there are things that I think about which make it even more interesting to do during the process, but definitely emotionally, it allows me to exercise some demons or put my feet in shoes I normally am not in. And, you know, there's also something revolutionary about bringing joy. You know, I think there's something to bringing joy. There's a revolution to laughter. You know, everything doesn't have to be super serious, and the best way to get a message across isn't always super serious. You know, I find a lot of the humor that I enjoy is spoonful of sugar. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a lot of the Chris Rock stuff and Richard Pryor and Dave Chappelle and you know, going back before that, Lenny Bruce. You know, it's about, to me, everything has a message. I mean something in everything I do. I don't throw away anything. There's not, I mean, even down the commercials I've done, I don't throw away what that means. Like, talk about that Verizon commercial. I'm pretty sure I played a genius in that too. Like,
I think you did. Nah, you definitely did. You definitely did.
You know, so for me, I think there's always something to bring. There's always a humanity to bring. And unfortunately, there's kind of been civil unrest in one shape or another my entire life regarding Black people. So there's always this thing there. Susan Mori Parks, who wrote Top Dog Underdog, it struck me when I was in college and I wrote it because there's a foreword where it goes, must it be a political statement every time a Black person walks on stage? You know? And I was like, holy shit, every time there's a play with a majority white people, it is. It is, because all of a sudden the worlds are broken simply by us existing in front of them in a way they don't see us.
Right.
You know? So
that's interesting. And you used a word that I use all the time, even describing my purpose as a DJ, and it's to kind of bring joy to people. Like you're unifying folks, and like you said, bringing humanity to these characters, bring humanity to the people that you play, because we all need to understand that we, outside of the construct of racism and the divisiveness that has been propagandized. I think I just made up a word. Propagandized, you know, divisiveness and our differences. That the truth of the matter is, we all share a lot. We share a lot more in common than what we don't.
we do.
It's important. So I think as artists and as creatives, it's important that we do that in our work. To go like, yo, it's like if you can party with me, then you should be able to have a conversation with me. Like, I mean, if we can share liquor, because liquor is not cheap in the club. If we can share liquor, right, then we should be able to have a conversation. Not that we need to agree on everything, but we should be able to come to understanding, because we just experienced a couple of hours of love. At the end of the day, that's what it is. If we're in this room and we're enjoying this music and we're partying and we're dancing and high-fiving, what we just experienced is a moment of love. So if we can experience it there, we should be able to experience it outside of the situation. I feel it's the same way when it comes to acting. Like if I can watch a TV show or a movie and I can see Malcolm Barrett, if I'm a white person, not me, clearly, but if I was a white person, and just see you give me a whole nother perspective of what the Black experience is, then I could be like, oh, okay, you know, I was wrong about this.
Yeah.
You know, learn something from it. And I'm sure we learn stuff from other cultures as well when we watch them.
Hopefully.
And different stuff. Hopefully, but you just hope that their representation is honest and not a caricature of, you know, who they are. I want to change paces a little bit. I want to get into something I always found interesting. Because when we first reconnected back on Instagram, I was like, why is his handle Verbal Be Rapping? Like, he's an actor. Like, I don't get it. And then and people who know you as an actor, like, shouldn't you be like, you know, Malcolm Barrett, the actor, not Verbal Be Rapping? Tell me about Verbal Be Rapping. What is the Verbal brand? What is that all about?
So I've been rapping since I was like a kid. I have one solo album out, The Backpacker's Guide to the Galaxy, and two duo albums out under the names Verbal. My rap name is Verbal the Rapper. And I have my boy Icarus. I rap, he sings. So we've been together, I think 5, 6, 7 years, met in college. We have 2 albums out, the first of which was called the Sin City LP, which was named after what our name used to be. And a new one is called Funhouse, which we released last year. I'll try, and I'll try.
I'll try, I'll try. KB, Sin City, Proximity, RJ, what you know about that, huh? Yeah, I said I love you so, you wouldn't let me go, but little did I know you wouldn't try. I need you every night, I hold my pillow tight, and pray to see the light of these eyes. Now I thought to be what you taste, so leave you thinking in this game. I'm out of my mind, what am I online? Is this my space? Is this the space? Shove your face in the dirt till they stay in your place. I scream and I holler, but it doesn't make a thing. I'm trying to make it all out of 15 cents. I'm really getting it and it's all too fake. Let's listen. I'm drunk off home, drunk off there. Second just drinking, no one knows my name. Smoke your word, now earn my cake. And it just all dies as it burns to the flame.
So, yeah, so I've been rapping and freestyling for a while. You know, the bills get paid by acting, and folks know me more as acting. But like when I was in college age, about 25, 26, I was heavy rapping. I was doing shows in New York, sometimes in LA. Actually, Better Off Ted, the very last. So my first album was called The Backpacker's Guide to the Galaxy, and there's a song on it called Revenge of the Nerds. So if you watch if Better Off Ted, the series finale, there's a part where we're strolling and they use my song.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I've made a song for a lot of the TV shows that I've been on. Actually, Timeless, we did a video that got a huge amount of views called Hero in a Hoodie. And so it was rapping over Jaden Smith's Icon song.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's always kind of been a thing. I've always been rapping. It used to be Verbal Kint after Usual Suspects, and then I just shortened it to Verbal.
Okay.
And then I think there's another Verbal somewhere else, so I sometimes go by Verbal the Rapper or something like that. But yeah, I got 3 albums out musically, and I still do music. I still drop freestyles here and there every once in a while for whatever occasion. And you know, we did 3 music videos in like a couple of months. We just really wanted to get some stuff out there. And worked with a couple different writer directors. You know, we did something for a song called Bender. We did another for Hoops. We did Hero in a Hoodie, and we did one more, but Fame, the song Fame. But it's cool because we got, you know, we're actors. We got some cool artists to do it. Tina Wong, who's Brazilian Isles and a million other things. She directed one of our videos, Bender. Bobby Quadra just sort of did everything for one of our other videos. And then Timmy Banks, who recently directed Insecure. I had seen her years ago in a festival circuit.
Wait, who you said Themby Banks?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the homie.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
Now that's the homie. Yeah. So you're writing. So like you said, you're mostly known for your acting, but your writing and your love for poetry and spoken word and just emceeing as a whole has definitely led you to other things. So you were part of the New Eurekan poetry, right? So you were part of it, and I know like you won a couple of was it like contests or awards or something like that?
Yeah. So in 2001, or basically 2001, I was heavy on the poetry scene, on the slam poetry scene. I was at NYU, so I was at Gallery of the Tribes. So there's a place on the Lower East Side on 3rd Street run by Steve Cannon, AKA the Blind Professor. And so it's sort of this community center / art space run by this blind guy, Steve Cannon, who's been in the neighborhood for years. Ridiculously smart man. And so I was there about a block away from there. So I interned there when I was in college, which just means I like filed, I don't know what the fuck I was doing. But about a block away from that is the Eurekan Poetry Cafe. So all through college, I was going to the Poetry Cafe and I wanted to get up there because I was like, I'm dope. I know I'm dope. I'm gonna kill this shit.
Right.
And I finally got it. It's the weirdest plan and it fucking worked, which is that Felice Bell, who used to host over there, she would do this thing where she, like, to have fun, she would invite people to like maybe sing a song or something like that. And I knew that if I think she wanted you to sing the theme song to the Jeffersons. And I was like, if I get up there and I kill this shit, I know that'll somehow segue into me being able to ask if I can do poetry at some point.
Right.
And the stupidest plan I've ever heard of worked. And so I wound up doing poetry. And so I did it there. I did it at Justin's. Like I was on the scene for like a heavy minute, you know what I mean? And I was and then I was on the New Rican teams, 2001 with Mata Del Valle, with Jade, Ainsley Burroughs. Like these are all names if you're on the New York poetry scene.
Ainsley's the homie. Ainsley now, Ainsley is the founder and he runs Sweet Spot, the erotic poetry. It's like an erotic poetry jam. And it's like, it's like global. Like what he's done with it is actually absolutely amazing. Ainsley's the homie.
He was doing that. So Ainsley was the first person that taught me that like I could do poetry as a vocation. Because I roomed with him when I was at 2001. We were in, I think, Seattle. He would break out his chat books. He had them all out and organized and all of this and blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, oh, this can be done. Because I still was trying to discover what I was going to be. You know what I mean? I was probably in my 20s, but I was like, okay, I was still in college, living in the dorms. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll be a poet, you know? And I was still tutoring and doing a teaching artist thing, but I was like, okay, maybe I'll be a poet or a rapper, still doing the acting thing. Like at that point, any of that could have just as easily happened. Right. The acting just took off. I think moving to LA just changed things a lot because I didn't have a car. So like I wasn't going to poetry spots or trying to rap anywhere. Like, but the thing that moved me to LA was this other show, Luis Guzman, and so that took me to LA. And so the rapping and poetry didn't happen as much, except when I went back to New York.
Right.
And then the acting was happening here. And basically, it's like, I still didn't have a car then. It was like, well, I got to get this gig because I got to pay for the cab. So it was just like, I got to get this audition. I got to get this part, you know? Yeah.
I don't miss those days. I remember plenty of days early in my DJ career. It was like, I barely had enough money to get to the gig. Mm-hmm. But at least I know getting to the gig, I have some money. So at least I could get back home, and then I have something to hold me off to the next.
Yeah.
And you bring that up, and I want to talk about the idea of just like what is it inside of you, either spiritually or mentally, that keeps you from officially giving up? Because anybody who's in the entertainment industry, at minimum, at least 50 times, you have said out loud, and maybe to some other people, "Fuck this shit. I quit. I don't want to do this no more." You know?
Yeah, I'm confident, man. I mean, really, you know, and that comes from, you know, being raised right, having somebody that loved me, that taught me that I had value, right? Mm-hmm. And then aside from that, I contemplated quitting after Sopranos. Heavily, I contemplated quitting, partially because of the weight of representation, right? Like that's a lot. Like it's a lot to have to deal with that. And it'd be easier to just live my life and do a thing and be a teacher. And I'm not thinking about that. Like I don't have to be as a teacher worry about like, what does society say? You know, outside of like actually dealing with police in my daily life, like I don't have to worry about what does this say about all Black people if I'm just a teacher, you know? But when I take all these parts, it's a whole thing. And so that took a while for me, you know, the crack dealer thing. And then also, I remember saying this to a friend. I was auditioning for a lot of parts where Black people got shot in the head and called a nigger. And I know it seems weird, but when you actually think about it, it's more often than you think. And it's frustrating. Like I remember, there was a series of movies that I was just reading where I was like, like Departed. Like it's seen outside. Look at Departed. I auditioned for the role of Anthony Anderson's part, right?
Okay.
Some point he gets called a nigger. At some point he gets shot in the head. Like there's some other movie where I think the Al Pacino movie, or what was it called, Underground or something, where at some point the character gets called a nigger. At some point he gets shot in the head. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know that happens to any other ethnicity. I don't know that I see Jews getting called a slur for Jews and then getting shot in the head in just movies about daily life. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and I was like, man, this is like 3 in a row. This is like, y'all love this shit. I mean, you can go back to early Scorsese with like fucking Samuel Jackson in either Goodfellas, I think it is, or something. Samuel Jackson is in that movie for like 5 minutes. Relatively short, he gets called a nigger, and I'm 100% sure he gets shot in the head. and like that was the thing that made me almost quit was seeing script. Because like I said, the biggest power I have now and the biggest power I gained was saying no. Like, and I think a lot of people are worried because this job is so hard about saying no.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not. I've been broke before. You know, when that toner thing happened, I was broke again. But I tell you this, I didn't take any part that like made me feel shitty or shitted on the Black community as a whole. You know what I mean? It's just, I can do this all over again. I can do bad all by myself, man. And so that was a point where I almost quit and I thought about quitting. But I've always been good at my job. And sooner or later there were opportunities. And so like, I'm not going to lose, man. I decided a while ago, I'm not going to lose. And the plan has worked so far.
Do you feel like that's, I almost feel like I know the answer to this question. And that ideology and that approach to how you go about your craft and the roles that you pick, do you feel like there is solidarity amongst Black actors in Hollywood with that idea? Or do you feel like there are more Black actors that are just looking at it like, look, I'm just trying to get on. If this is what I got to do, I'll do it no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, look, like you said earlier, right? Like, there's no monolith, right? Like, I think there's pockets and situations where we become uniform, you know, as a community. And also, I just try and surround myself with people who have a similar thought process. Like, I keep a group around me in Hollywood that are like very real people. You know, I have a group of folks that I hang with, a bunch of Black nerds. And that's what we're about. We're about helping each other, helping others, and growing. So I literally have a community of people here where that's what they do. So I don't know how much I can speak to the greater community. I think we come together when it's necessary, and everybody has a different way of going. You know, I talked to Phil Lamar on my show months ago, and, you know, he'll tell you, he was like, I'm not an activist, I'm a survivor. He's like, he's been in this game obviously longer than me by decades. He can't be that much older, I don't fucking know. But he talks about that, and it's just like, he's like, I am a survivor. I'm not here to do this. I've been here, you know, and he represents, you know what I mean? He is Green Lantern, do you know what I mean? He's represented, he's one of the most prolific cartoon voices in history, in American history. And so it is a thing of, I think there's a certain amount of survival, but I think there's a community, you know what I mean? Black Hollywood exists in a very different way. I'm sure he would have a lot to say about it. And so I don't know exactly what Black Hollywood exists like today, even, you know, quote unquote, being a part of it, if I am in any way, shape, or form. I do think we come together, and there is a community when we're on sets. Like, the difference between like Black sets and white sets, it's very different. I feel like Black folks were always kind of thankful that we're there. We're like, can you believe this shit? You believe they gave us all this goddamn money to do this shit? This is fucking cool. Like, songs are being sung, like you know, your hugs, and we're looking like
That's that's anything. That's Black folks. When we show up to any space, public or private, we're the minority. When we see the others, we like, yo.
Yeah, we had like 2 really Black episodes of Timeless, and the set vibes different as shit. Set vibes was like, I mean, we're having whole ass church, and, you know, Black folks roasting each other and shit all day and shit, you know, whole ass songs and ciphers is happening and all this shit. You know? Oh yeah, it's fucking beautiful, man. I gotta get me a Black show, but one where I get paid on time, because they gonna fuck with money. That's why you see me in all this white shit. I need my check on time.
Yeah, and so that's kind of tied into something that we were talking about earlier, in the sense that it's like, I know Black actors want to tell Black stories, because I know growing up, I always thought it was odd, right? Even you look at shows like Saved by the Bell, like this whole school, y'all got one Black person. Like, where did this one Black person come from, right? And you see it in movies, and it was always like a group of white people and then one minority, whether that person be Black, Asian, Hispanic, always one. Like, how did this one person end up in this place, right? So are you like, are you fielding Black production offers? Are you not? Are they not checking for you? Like, because most of the stuff that you are in are predominantly white productions. So like, why do you feel like it's that way?
That's where money is. I mean, what the fuck to tell you? Do you know what I mean? It's like money and luck of the draw. You know what I mean? There's not. It depends. Like, you know, like I said, Aretha is probably the blackest shit I've done in a little bit. You know, and it's just it's production and radar. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I don't get invited to all the Black shit, but probably because I'm not like, I don't do whole, like, I haven't been a part of stories that are like wholly Black.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, Aretha's closest in a while. Like the last super Black things I did, like TV wise, other than like Live My Black Life, was like, I did like a Mike Epps thing, and I did something. Nick Cannon had like an offshoot sketch comedy show called like Electric something or blah, blah, blah. And I love both of them as comedians and all of that and blah, blah. But I tell you this, I'm gonna tell you this because I don't think it's gonna reach the white networks and broadcasts. I can be honest with you. I ain't get my payment on time. Like, I'll be real honest with you. Like, I did the fucking Mike Epps shit, right? And because that's the thing, right? The system is also built to support white people. The system is not built to support Black folks, right? So we're self-sufficient in a lot of it, and so we're struggling in a lot of ways. It feels like, and so I remember this is my Mike Epps story, which is like, he has basically a pilot that he's sort of creating, and so they asked me to come on there. Sometimes I get offered stuff, I don't have to audition. So they asked me there because there's a sketch they want to do about Dave Chappelle. Like, I would always get the Dave Chappelle comparisons.
I can see that.
I got it so early that I stay away from anything Dave Chappelle-esque.
I got you.
Like I'm just like, my own road. I don't want people to say it's this, carve my own thing. So this is the one time they said, I want you to do this. I said, fine, I'll do it. It's fucking Mike Epps. I love Mike Epps. I'm down. You know, I don't have a Chappelle impression, like whatever shit that cut crosses over is coincidental, you know, or a result of me watching, I'm sure. But so I didn't really have anything. So like the night before, I'm working, I'm looking at tapes, all this shit. I show up, I get to set, we're waiting, there's lunch, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I'm kind of waiting on some shit to happen, like what's going to go down. And I haven't seen Mike all day. You know, the normal process is you go in, you go through here in makeup, you see the other actor, and then you can shoot the scene, right? There's maybe a little waiting to set up lights and whatever, and you shoot whatever. So I'm on set. I've been brought to this location. I'm waiting for a little bit. And at some point, the director, a 50, 60-year-old man with graying cornrows, rolls up to me and is like, my brother. And I'm like, fuck! No shit is fucked up. When a Black man in a professional setting come at you with any type of my brother,
right?
I was like, oh shit, how am I getting fucked today? And the motherfucker, they were like, Mike's not here. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, it's not here. It's you know, he has some gig out of town, something, blah, 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 so we can't be here. So I do it with this other comic who, I'm not gonna break his name out, but the nigga can't read. Like, it's one of these BET comic view ass Negroes where it's just like, what the fuck is going down? And so it's just like so he's taking Epps's place. I'm doing this character, and it's like the whole time he's horrible, like his ad libs are not on here, so I'm having to bring him here. All right, great. And then I did this other sketch comedy thing, and it's like the conditions were horrible. And then here's what happens. Because we are a minority, studios and whoever else don't pay us as much, right? And they know that we need, as a production as a whole, right? As people, as producers, we need the opportunities, right? And so because of that, a lot of times Black shit or minority shit gets underfunded. Or because we can do without you, or we've had to do without you, we cut corners and we do these smaller versions of things that then get bought and sold to the general public. And so, you know, that's why you have, like, you look at Jordan Peele and shit, like that shit was like basically no money. That shit was like not a major studio shit when it first came out, but like
Right.
the shit got big and now like he gets a little bit more budget, right? And he's still not making like big budget movies. Like none of these horrors are like huge budgets. Do you know what I mean? Like, so we still exist outside of the studio system until we prove ourselves in a way different way than our counterparts do.
Right.
You know? So I definitely do low budget shit, you know what I mean? When I know folks, I work with folks I know and blah, blah, blah. But I think it's a mix of that and not always being on the radar, partially because I haven't done this shit. Like probably the last one before that actually was People's. Like speaking of Tyler Perry, that was like produced by Tyler Perry's offshoot company.
Mm-hmm.
That was with Kerry Washington and Craig Robinson and David Allen Greer and Tyler James Williams and Esapatha Murkison. Like that's probably the last big budget Black thing before Aretha that I've done. Because people are mostly seeing me do TV shows, and there's not, because that's the thing, right? Like I'm not really like, I guess there's some level of fame or whatever, but like I'm guessing most people see me from the TV shows I do, and most TV is white. Like,
yeah,
period. Like I can't think of a Black show that's on that doesn't star a famous, an already famous musician or comedian, right?
Yeah.
So the fight to be on those shows is hard. Like the fight to be on, you know, like I auditioned for Marlon Wayne's show, you know what I mean? A million people audition to be, you know, that guy's brother, like a million people from all walks of life. So it's also about what you wind up getting, you know, what you wind up getting in for. And so like, I just wasn't on that show. And like, if I would have got Marlon, I would have been known for that for about 4 or 5 years, right? But the last thing I got was like Timeless, where I played Black genius in a very white society or in a very white environment. I mean, and there's, you know, our guests and Mason, who's my boss and father figure, is Black too. But it stands out, you know, and I'm in these projects where it stands out in this way. And I think it's just about audiences, you know what I mean? It's about finding audiences and you being found in the things you get on, you know what I mean? I'd love to do more Black projects. I have 1,000,001 Black heroes in the industry who I'd love to work with, you know, like doing Genius Aretha is awesome for me. It's amazing. Like, and that's the thing is like, everything's like your last job, right? So if this goes, all of a sudden I'm gonna be the Blackest motherfucker in the world. You know what I mean? If this hits the way it hits,
right.
You know what I mean? So it's a weird thing, and that's why I look at it. It's a career, right? It's not a moment. It's a career, and so I've built a career which, when people look back on it, go, oh yeah, you play not only the smartest Black man in the room a lot of times, but you play the smartest man in the room a lot of times in a majority of these situations. And it's because I'm building a career, not just having a job. And I know how quickly the general public's sentiment about you changes. I know the next job, if it's big enough, will be what the audience thinks I am now.
Agreed.
You know?
Agreed. Yeah, so I want to talk about theater. I know you founded, you're one of the founding members of a theater, is it a theater company? Is it theater like organization in New York? I want you to talk about that and just kind of talk about like theater, because theater is completely different than anything in TV and film. Like it's a whole different animal. I've tried my hand. I've been in independent films and, you know, done in front of camera things on, you know, on my own projects. I am deathly afraid of theater. Deathly. But talk about the organization and also, you know, just theater life in general.
Yeah. So my background is in theater in terms of training, in terms of my craft. Like here's hopefully your audience will find this interesting. I'm like, this is fucking not interesting. But like, that's my background, right? That's what I come from. And nonprofit theater. So when I was in New York, I founded a theater company called Real Theater Works, and it was a nonprofit theater company. And it was dedicated to the voices of the underrepresented. It was mostly minority company. I have a company in LA, and it's a similar principle, just larger and more multi-ethnic. It's called Ammunition Theater Company, and our goal, we focus mainly on stories we focus on women and people of color being in prominent positions, having decision-making positions and power in the company. So that was our thing, or that was the thing that I noticed in theater. Like, here's what was missing from theater, in my perspective as a young Black dude from Brooklyn. I wasn't seeing enough stories of people of color. I wasn't seeing enough stories of people of color in the lead. I wasn't seeing enough stories of people of color where it wasn't about them being people of color. And you can replace all of this with Black people too, depending on wherever you're listening. And so that's how that theater company started there. And this was a similar thing. It's always an extension of it. Like my thing is always to give an opportunity to those who may not have one, right? Because that was me. Like I'm when Hollywood looks at us, we're like the special little Black kid from the neighborhood who rose out of the gutter and concrete to become this amazing thing. Mm-hmm. And really, it's just about like listening to people, right? And like giving a hand to others. So that's the intention behind this theater company. It's a nonprofit theater company, as was my last one. We've existed for about 5 years. I've been the artistic director for all 5 years. Some of the others have changed, but we're all in this company together. And I love doing theater. I mean, it's, you know, we've been putting on for 5 years. Now we've sort of adopted to being online in a lot of cases. We do every second Thursday, we do a sort of variety show called Ammo Lives, where we have people from all walks of life. You know, we had former incarcerated artists, we have teachers, we have dancers, members of the LGBTQ community. And then we also have a new segment that I'm producing called Ammo Stories, where I think every 2 weeks we'll have a different member share just a story, and it sort of compares all of our lives. You get a glimpse into the lives of the people who are part of this company, while also seeing how different theaters change and what it's going to be like now that we're in social distancing. But I've always loved theater because it allowed me to be so many more things, and it allows me to use all the tools of my craft to my fullest extent. You know, if I'm doing a play, right, I may get to be Tybalt, and we may do all these sort of added, exaggerated physicality, and I play that character for 2 hours, and I have a backstory, and there's all these fights that may happen, sword fighting, and I work for months figuring out the character, creating gestus, changing my body, do all of these things to fulfill that, and I'm working with a company of people that may be about 30 or so actors, and so we are working together as a community to create this entire story, you know, after it's been written and maybe workshop. Then we put it on, and then we perform for a month, and it's live, and all the things that you worked for go out the fucking window. It was just homework because now somebody's coughing, or somebody fucked up a line, or somebody, you know, didn't make their entrance in the proper way, or whatever the fuck happened. And it's amazing, and you're alive. And the thing about it is it teaches you to stay in the moment. You can't leave. You have to be there no matter what happens. You can't stop the play, right? It's very different from television, because in television, you're only acting like 45 seconds at a time. Do you know what I mean? A play, I may give a soliloquy and talk for a while, you know, like, but soft, what light through yonder window breaks, it is the east, and Juliet, it's the sun arise, fair sun, and kill thee in this moon, and I get to do all of this shit. And then when I get to TV, I go, I wouldn't put a pretzel there. Like, and I collect my money and I go home.
Yeah. and that's exactly why I'm deathly afraid of theater. It's because even though, I mean, in theater, clearly you have to be able to you have to have the ability to kind of wing it, to improv in certain situations because something happens, right? So you got to be able to use that and pivot it and make it seem like it's part of what was supposed to happen. You keep going. But I just feel like I'd always be the one forgetting the line, walking too fast, too slow, not hitting my mark. And it's like, you don't get a chance to like, all right, let me do that again. Like, you're there. Yeah. And it's amazing to me that scares the shit out of me, because DJing is the same thing. Like you don't get to redo it. Like you're there,
No.
but I'm confident as a DJ. Like I trust myself.
That's literally the difference.
Yeah.
That's literally all it is that. But look, also that's what rehearsal is about, right? Like the rehearsal is 2 months of doing that same activity so that you are confident. You're confident as a DJ because you've been doing this shit for years.
Right.
You know what the fuck you're doing. You can do this shit with your eyes closed and not think about it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, if the venue is in this city with this demographic of people at this time of night, at this time of year, like radio being what it is, you know what you fit into play. You know what I mean? You ready and fit to do it. I know on any given day, in any given play, if I know what the material is, if I know what my audience is, I look at my audience, I go, okay, this venue, I know how to fit every situation. I'm confident. It's probably why I'm confident as a speaker, because so much of what I have to do is reading an audience and reading people. And you know, I come from doing improv too. I was doing improv comedy on stage. So I think between being a freestyle rapper and being an improv comedian, I'm comfortable on stage. It makes me super comfortable. I'm not, the worst comes to worst is I'll have to make stuff up, and I can do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you know?
I get it. Those are tools there's the tools that you have in your toolbox that can be applied to pretty much everything that you do. I want to talk quickly about your show. So it's live with Malcolm, going live with Malcolm.
Yeah.
Yes. Going live with Malcolm, where you interview different celebrities that won't respond to my DMs, but you get them.
Good. We're doing something.
Yeah. So talk about that and where that came from, because I know for me, the Loop was something that existed before the quarantine, but it existed in a different format. It was just me, and I was just pretty much speaking from an educational, informative standpoint on culture, specifically DJ culture and stuff like that. But the quarantine afforded me the opportunity to revise it and really think about it. It's like, I have some really dope people in my network that are doing some major things. I can make this more of an interview type show and more entertaining. As much as I love myself, I don't think people want to sit and listen and look at me for like an hour. Like that ain't it.
No, but it's working with your fashion sense. That's why you come in.
I get it. I just don't think people care to listen to me that much. But so, I've been able to create it in this format. So is that something that kind of, because of the quarantine, helped birth your YouTube show?
100%. Yeah. So what was happening is I would randomly go on Instagram every once in a while. I have a buddy, Steve Zaragoza. He's always doing this shit. But I would randomly go on and bullshit. And then every once in a while, a buddy of mine would show up when I was doing the lives. And it'd usually be some actor buddy or something like that. And, people get a kick out of it, and it was just fun shit I was doing. When the lockdown happened, I was pivoting because, like you, I can't perform publicly. So I was trying to figure out what can I do and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I should turn this thing into a real show. I don't know. I was thinking about doing it, and I just never followed through. And then lockdown happened, and I saw people doing IG live shows, and I was like, motherfucker. I was doing that. I should have been. What the fuck? I'd be so ahead of the game. And so finally I was like, all right, fuck it. Let me really do this. And I made a promise to myself. I said, I'm going to do 10 episodes, right? I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm doing 10 episodes of this show and see what happens. It was also sparked by working with my boy Brandon for our thing, Verbal and Icarus. He's known as Icarus, I'm Verbal. And so I was like, all right, I'll also create content for us, right? So we'll have something. So he's my first official interview, and it got totally erased.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I didn't know what I was doing, right? When I was doing it for Instagram, and I was like, and Instagram had just changed its settings, so I was just like, okay. So that one's erased. But then my next guest was Marquis Richardson, who's in Dear White People and Antebellum, and I met him from doing Dear White People in a movie, and he's still in Dear White People, the Netflix TV show.
And so that came out of the fact that like Marquis a good buddy of mine, and at the time we were doing Aretha, and he is somebody that I can talk to about anything, be it ridiculous or serious, and we can go either way, and it works out, and it's fun. And so I knew when I wanted to do this show, we're dealing with Black Lives Matter in what feels like eons ago, and feels like it was heavier even then, but we're dealing with Black Lives Matter, we were dealing with the lockdown, and I knew that he was the one person I could talk to where if I felt like dealing with those issues, we could do it and still have a good time.
Right.
And so that's kind of been the vein of most of the show, is that it's people where I can be completely ridiculous and at the same time have a real conversation about representation and what's going on and all. And that's why the name is so ridiculous, Going Live with Malcolm, because the show is just, I make up games right before. I try and come up with about 3 or 4, because I'm still finding the show. And so for me, a lot of the fun is just throwing things at the guests and they don't know what happened, and I'll smoke and drink and do whatever and have fun. And so like I literally, Phil Lamar was on a guest. I started this show called Voices Off, where I have guests who are voice actors do different voices. But what most of my guests haven't realized is that I always tell them that I'll name, they'll do any voice. I tell them to name, I'll name the character, the show, the year the show came out, and the episode number. What my guest doesn't know is that I don't know the information. And I know that I don't. Some of it I do know, but it's just fun here and it leads to really ridiculous moments. And I just had Rosa Salazar from Alita Battle Angel. And I told her before this thing, like now I'm starting to tell people now that I figure out what I'm doing. I was like, just so you know, things can get weird. So like bring your weird. And she goes, how weird? And I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting. She comes, she's wearing like a full Little Bo Peep outfit or something like that. She's like a Latina Little Bo Peep. She's got 2 joints ready for me. She like made her own liquor. We're just like yelling at each other for like 20 minutes at a time. It was just crazy shit. You know what I mean? So that's where the show came out of. The show came out of just wanting to have fun with people who I knew had things to say and wouldn't shy away from it. And I also just felt like, if I can't get super black now, when can I? You know what I mean? Like this is the moment. And also I just, it's predominantly, when I look at it, and I'm sure I thought about it, but it's predominantly guests of color. It's predominantly black people, really. And so it's also a way of highlighting black folks, even though my last 2 guests were Danny Fernandez and Rosa Salazar. I think a big part of it is just, showing. I also don't think you see that many talk shows where it's mostly black people on it or mostly people of color on it. You know what I mean?
And speaking in our dialogue, speaking in our cadence, be like our native tongue. So before I let you go, the show is called The Loop, right? And we, like I said, we really discuss culture and how it impacts us and how it has influenced us into who we are and why we do what we do. I don't want to say for every guest, I do 2 things. So at the end, it's like your top 5 of a specific thing, right? And then there's one thing that you can listen to or watch on loop every day, all day. So I can't even pigeonhole you. I can't just put you in a box as an actor, because you're an entertainer, because you do so much. So I want to ask you, who are your top 5 entertainers of all time?
Wow. Okay. Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy. Erykah Badu, Robin Williams, Michaela Cole, Redman.
Wow.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank you for keeping the string going of people answering this question and me going, really? Like I've had so many people and they've said names. I'm like, really? Like that? Like why? I'm into Redman.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I think Redman is one of the most underrated MCs ever, hands down.
Yeah.
But why Redman? What about Redman?
Redman is probably one of the biggest influences on my entire career. He's one of my favorite rappers of all time. One of my favorite lines from him is, I'd be like, like I got cerebral palsy. Genius. Fucking genius.
Wait. Can I tell you one of my favorite lines from him?
Please.
And it is the most outlandish. And this is what I love about Redman. He's one of the most outlandish rappers ever. He said, I keep my hose spreaded from Japanese to diabetics. He explained the diversity of his harem of women with ethnicity and medical conditions. Like that is brilliant. For you to understand how many women I have and the diversity of it. I can't keep it in one context.
You thought I was just gonna go with race?
Japanese to diabetics. Like, I just thought that was brilliant.
I think he's great. And the Superman Lover series, I just think, and each album, Fuck You, I'll Be That. I mean, look, if you look at the commonality between the people I just named, who I didn't expect to name, between Robin Williams, Eddie Murphy, Erykah Badu, Redman, they don't take themselves that seriously. And they're also not afraid to push the envelope in a way that reflects who they are and not in a way that is trying to push the buttons of society around them. And they're wholly creative in who they are. They are fully realized in who they are. And they're iconoclasts and they're individuals and they have great senses of humor. That's all. That's what I value, and those are all the things I try to bring to each and everything, every piece of art or work that I produce.
I can totally respect that, and I totally with you explaining, I definitely see the common thread. And shout out to Redman. Maybe one day I can get him on the show because I love that dude. Okay, so lastly, if there was one thing, it could be a project. It could be a movie, it could be a television series, whatever it is that you can watch on loop every day, all day, what would it be?
I'll tell you what I play the most. Oh, I just had my birthday party, virtual birthday party, and played Rock and Roller, the Guy Ritchie movie. So I could definitely do that on loop all day. And then it'd be between that and The Warriors and The Last Dragon. Yeah,
man. So first of all, thank you, Malcolm, so much for taking time out to be on the show. I'm so happy for social media. I have my issues with social media, but social media is what allowed us to kind of reconnect and reestablish our relationship. So I appreciate that. Tell the folks when Going Live with Malcolm is on, comes on, where they can find it, and also where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, you can find me, Verbally Rapping, I think, is my Instagram, and Malcolm Barrett is my Twitter, and I think Verbal the Rapper is my Twitch now. Yeah, on my Instagram, Going Live with Malcolm is every Tuesday at 3 p.m. And then we do the YouTube version of the previous show, usually midnight, like Monday, Monday morning, Sunday night, we do midnight. But I'm probably gonna break out a bonus show tomorrow, but I'm trying to get the the YouTube show closer to when I've been airing the show on Instagram. So yeah, that's every Tuesday. You can find me there. I think I'm in other stuff. The machine will do the work.
Yeah.
Thing, you know what I mean?
It's like that. When you got a lot going on, it's like, bro, I don't know. Just pick up your phone. You'll find me. I'll be somewhere.
I mean, if you're on my Twitter or my Instagram, then you'll be, the thing I need to say is Going Live with Malcolm, right? Because that doesn't have advertising dollars. That's just me telling you. So,
Right.
so you know. Oh, and go to amotheater.com, learn more about my theater company. And you'll be able to see more of our work because we're going virtual for more of our stuff. Like I said, we have the Ammo stories that are going to go to our Instagram account. All of the accounts are amotheater.com. We're on Twitter and Instagram. So you can go to our site and we'll have our calendar up and it'll tell you about Ammo Stories, which are stories from Ammo. It'll have Voices of Ammo, which is our talent show, which maybe you and this community can be a part of if you email us or Instagram us, and maybe you can be a voice, because now we can have artists from all over the country and all over the world, because not just like who we know in LA. We usually do, the way that we do that show is it's via Instagram Live. So we'll usually have a host, somebody from our theater company in LA, and then we'll find artists, and we're looking for more artists to perform, and then they just tap into our live, and then they're on, and we display them and we showcase your talent for about an hour or so. So if you're interested in doing that, you can reach us at amotheater.com, and there's you can go there, or you can DM Ammo Theater on Instagram.
Solid. Thank you again, brother. I appreciate you for your time. Once again, this has been The Loop, and my name is DJ CEO. Until next time, make sure you stay in the loop.
And put your mask on. Stay indoors.